The Doctor Who Killed for Love, the chilling Intel parking garage murder case. The call from the garage. It was a cold evening in Hillsboro, Oregon, when the quiet hum of city traffic was cut short by the shrill echo of police sirens. Lieutenant Lynn still remembers the exact words from dispatch: suspicious vehicle found in Intel parking structure. Possible deceased occupant. He thought it would be routine, maybe a case of someone asleep in their car after a long shift. But as he pulled into the massive Intel campus garage, the atmosphere felt different. Empty concrete floors stretched endlessly, bathed in the flicker of sterile fluorescent light. The air felt still, too still, like it was holding its breath. The officer parked, grabbed his flashlight, and followed the faint metallic echo of his boots. Then he saw it, a black Honda Civic, engine off, windows fogged, parked neatly in the second-level corner. Inside sat a man in the driver's seat. Head tilted down. Hands resting calmly on his lap. At first glance, he looked like he was sleeping. But something was wrong. The color of his skin. The stillness of his chest. The faint bluish hue around the neck. Lieutenant Lynn tapped gently on the window, no response. Moments later, backup arrived. The officer leaned closer, shining the beam through the glass. The truth hit immediately. The man was gone. They sealed off the garage. Cameras lined the ceilings, dozens of them, each blinking red, except, some weren't. Several lenses were spray-painted over in a streaky blue haze, the paint still fresh, dripping. Whoever did this wanted to erase their trail. By the time Detectives Stephanie Winter and Devin Rigo arrived, the entire scene felt like something out of a thriller. The body of Kenneth Fandrich, a 56-year-old contractor for Intel, was removed from the car. There was no sign of struggle. His lunch bag, keys, and phone sat neatly on the passenger seat, like he'd simply paused time and vanished from life. The detectives exchanged silent looks. It didn't make sense. No blood. No forced entry. No defensive wounds. Just peace, a deceptive kind of peace that hides a darker truth. The initial assumption was natural causes, but Stephanie's instincts screamed otherwise. "We treat every death like a homicide," she whispered, jotting down her notes. Then came the twist. The surveillance team inside Intel's command center sent over a message: "We might have something." Clips began to pour in, distorted footage of a masked man in a hard hat, dark clothing, safety glasses reflecting the fluorescent lights. He moved with eerie calm, stopping by each camera one by one, spraying the lenses until the images dissolved into blue static. He knew where every camera was. He had studied the place. The final piece of footage showed flashes of light from inside the garage, headlights flickering wildly in the same area where Kenneth's car was later found. Moments later, the feed went black. "That's when it happened," Devin said quietly. "That's when he was murdered." The detectives looked over the motionless vehicle once more. It wasn't just a death scene. It was a performance, carefully orchestrated, perfectly timed, and meant to disappear behind paint and silence. Outside, the night deepened over the empty Intel campus. Somewhere beyond those walls, the killer was already gone, maybe back to his home, maybe still watching from the distance. And none of them knew yet that this was only the beginning of one of Oregon's most chilling true crime stories, a story of obsession, betrayal, and a predator who thought he could hide behind a mask. The Widow's Secret. When Detectives Stephanie Winter and Devin Rigo sat down that night in the mobile command post, the fluorescent lights hummed softly above them. In the corner, a woman sat quietly, hands clasped together, eyes fixed on the table. Tanya Fandrich, the wife of the victim. She wasn't crying. She wasn't shaking. Just, still. Detective Diana Mesh led the questioning. Tanya's tone was flat, detached, as if her words were pre-recorded. "He didn't come home after work," she said. "We share locations. I saw his phone stopped moving, here." Mesh glanced up. "Here, the garage?" Tanya nodded. "Yes. I came straight over. And then, they told me he was gone." Her lack of emotion unsettled the room. Detectives had seen grief in every form: screaming, denial, collapse. But Tanya's silence was something else entirely. When pressed, she admitted they had issues. The marriage wasn't perfect. There had been arguments, jealousy, and, as she whispered, someone who wouldn't leave us alone. A stalker. She showed them footage from her home's security camera. In the video, a dark figure crept beneath their carport at night, crawling on hands and knees beneath a small trailer, flashlight flickering. A man. Careful. Calculating. Watching. That's him, Tanya said softly. My old boss. Dr. Stephen Milner. Stephanie and Devin exchanged a look. The name sounded familiar, a wealthy local veterinarian with a successful practice and spotless record. But Tanya's next words painted a different picture. We had an affair, she confessed. Years ago. Before things got bad. But I ended it. He didn't. Detective Rigo scribbled in his notebook. Did your husband know? She hesitated. Yes. He forgave me. But after that, Milner started following us. Calling at night. Showing up at my work. Once, I found a tracker under our car. That detail hit like thunder. A GPS tracker. Real stalker behavior, not imagination, not paranoia. Later that night, as detectives cross-checked Tanya's claims, the timeline began to twist into something darker. Milner wasn't just an ex-lover turned obsessive, he had threatened Kenny before. There were police reports, even a restraining order. One officer's note from a prior incident read: Victim reports suspect followed him from Oregon City to Hillsborough, believing wife in danger. Subject claims to be protecting her. It was clear, Milner's obsession had warped into delusion. But what made detectives' stomachs turn wasn't just his fixation, it was his access. Milner had wealth, resources, and intelligence. He was meticulous, the kind of man who could plan a murder like surgery. And the footage of the masked man in the garage, wearing a hard hat and safety glasses, perfectly matched Milner's world. A disguise built from his own profession. By dawn, the case was transforming from tragedy to pursuit. They pulled surveillance archives from Intel, months of footage. And in December, just weeks before the murder, cameras had caught another man doing the exact same thing, spray painting lenses, wearing the same outfit. The same gait. The same forehead line visible beneath the hard hat's rim. A crease across the brow, deep, unmistakable. Detective Winter leaned over the monitor, whispering, "That's him. That has to be Milner." Outside, the Oregon rain began to fall, streaking down the command post windows like tears the widow couldn't shed. A stalker obsessed. A marriage on edge. A man who saw himself as a savior, and believed removing the husband would bring him peace. As Tanya sat in her car outside the police tape, face lit by the flash of red and blue lights, her phone buzzed once, an unknown number. One new message. He's finally gone. You're free now. The obsession exposed. For days after the discovery in the Intel parking garage, detectives Stephanie Winter and Devin Rigo made their move. Their target, Dr. Stephen Milner, the wealthy veterinarian whose name now echoed through every police briefing in Hillsborough. They didn't warn him. They called him in under the pretense of routine paperwork related to the stalking case. When Milner walked into the office, Detective Winter was sitting quietly at the front desk pretending to be a receptionist. The moment she saw him, her heart stopped. His demeanor was calm but strange, too calm. His eyes darted around the lobby. And across his nose was a faint smudge of beige makeup. It wasn't to hide blemishes. It was to hide a fresh scratch. That was all they needed. Minutes after he left the station, Milner was arrested in his driveway. The House of Secrets. The search warrant turned up something that felt less like evidence and more like a psychological horror movie. Inside his bedroom, detectives found a cardboard cutout of Milner's own face, taped over the body of a muscular man with a dog paw tattoo over his heart. On his nightstand lay what investigators quietly called the shrine. There were framed photos of Tanya, love letters, and even women's underwear carefully folded beside a candle and handwritten notes. The handwriting looped with obsession. "You are mine forever. No one can take you away." Every drawer told a story of a man who couldn't let go. The missing van. But there was one piece missing, the maroon minivan caught on Intel's cameras, the same vehicle seen beside Kenny's black Honda Civic moments before the murder. Milner didn't own a van. He was known for driving a white SUV. But when detectives pulled GPS data from the SUV's internal computer, the pattern was clear: he had driven to Home Depot hours before the murder. Security footage from the store sealed his fate. There he was, Dr. Stephen Milner, walking through the aisles, buying a yellow hard hat and red-tinted safety glasses. The same disguise seen in the Intel surveillance footage. In another clip, he parked his SUV, walked across the lot, and got into a maroon van with no plates. Detectives called it his burner car. He had used it to stalk, to follow, and finally to kill. But when they traced the van's VIN number, it led to a scrapyard. They were 1 week too late. The minivan, the true crime scene, had already been crushed into metal scraps. Detective Rigo stood there watching the security replay, the giant claw dropping onto the van, flattening it forever. His voice was barely a whisper. "That's our whole case, gone. The trial." Even without the van, the case was ironclad. Forensic tests found Milner's DNA on Kenny's hands. When the trial began in January 2025, Milner shocked the courtroom by taking the stand himself. He admitted being at the garage, admitted spray painting the cameras, but claimed he was there to save Tanya from danger. He insisted Kenny attacked him first. A desperate lie. The jury didn't need long. After 6 hours, they returned the verdict: guilty of murder and stalking. At sentencing, Tanya didn't want her face on camera. She let her words be her weapon. "All you had to do was stop. You are a manipulative, hateful predator. And all you had to do was stop." Dr. Stephen Milner was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 25 years. In the end, detectives could only reflect on how obsession had consumed a man once seen as gentle and kind, a respected doctor turned monster. It was a reminder whispered in every shadowed parking lot and quiet suburban home. You never really know what anyone is capable of. Because sometimes, the monsters don't hide in the dark. They wear masks in the light.